Well, let's start off by your response to President Obama's statement and whether you think it represents a change.
It's approximately the Bush position. He began by saying that Israel, like any democracy, has a right to defend itself. That's true, but there's a gap in the reasoning. It has a right to defend itself. That doesn't follow that it has a right to defend itself by force. So we might agree, say, that the British Army and the United States in the colonies in 1776 had a right to defend itself from the terror of the George Washington's armies, which was quite real. But it didn't follow that they had a right to defend themselves by force, because they had no right to be here. So yes, they had a right to defend themselves, and they had a way to do it, namely leave. Same with the Nazis defending themselves against the terror of the partisans. They have no right to do it by force. In the case of Israel, it's exactly the same. They have a right to defend themselves, and they can easily do it. One, in a narrow sense, they could have done it by accepting the ceasefire that Hamas proposed right before the invasion. I won't go through the details. A ceasefire that had been in place and that Israel violated and broke. But in a broader sense, and this is a crucial omission in everything Obama said, and if you know who his advisors is, you understand why, Israel can defend itself by stopping its crimes. Gaza and the West Bank are a unit. Israel, with U.S. backing, is carrying out constant crimes, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, where it is moving systematically with U.S. support to take over the parts of the West Bank that it wants, and to leave Palestinians isolated in unviable cantons, Bantustans, as Sharon called them. Well, stop those crimes, and resistance to them will stop. Now, Israel has been able pretty much to stop resistance in the occupied territories, thanks in large part to the training that Obama praised by Jordan, of course, with U.S. funding and monitoring control. So yes, they've managed to, they in fact have been suppressing demonstrations, even demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations that called for support for the people of Gaza. They've carried out lots of arrests. In fact, they're a collaborationist force which supports the U.S. and Israel in their effort to take over the West Bank. Now, that's what Obama, if Israel, there's no question that all of these acts are in total violation of the foundations of international humanitarian law. Israel knows it. Their own advisors have told legal advisors have explained that to them back in '67. The World Court ruled on it. So it's all total criminality, but they want to be able to persist without any objection. And that's the thrust of Obama's remarks. Not a single word about U.S.-backed Israeli crimes, settlement, development, cantonization, a takeover in the West Bank. Rather, everyone should be quiet and let the United States and Israel continue with it. He spoke about the constructive steps of the Arab peace agreement very selectively. He said they should move forward towards normalization of relations with Israel. But that wasn't the main theme of the Arab League peace proposal. It was that there should be a two-state settlement, which the U.S. blocks. I mean, he said some words about a two-state settlement, but not where or when or how or anything else. He said nothing about the core of the problem, the U.S.-backed criminal activities, both in Gaza, which they attack at will, and crucially in the West Bank. That's the core of the problem. And you can understand it when you look at his advisors. So, say, Dennis Ross wrote an 800-page book about in which he blames Arafat for everything that's happening, barely mentions the word settlement over which was increasing steadily during the period when he was Clinton's advisor. In fact, peaked a sharp increase in Clinton's last year. Not a word about it. So the thrust of his remarks, Obama's remarks, is that Israel has a right to defend itself by force, even though it has peaceful means to defend itself. The states must move constructively to normalize relations with Israel, but very carefully omitting the main part of their proposal was that Israel and the United States should join the overwhelming international consensus for a two-state settlement. That's missing.
Noam Chomsky, I'd like to ask you about the enormous civilian casualties that have shocked the entire world in this last Israeli offensive. The Israelis claim, on the one hand, that it's the unfortunate result of the Hamas hiding among the civilian population. But you've said in a recent analysis that this has been Israeli policy almost from the founding of the state, the attack on civilian populations. Could you explain?
They say so. I was just quoting the chief of staff. This is 30 years ago. Virtually no Palestinian terrorism in Israel. Virtually, he said our policy has been to attack civilians, and the reason was explained by villages, towns, and so on, and it was explained by Abba Eban, the distinguished statesman, who said, yes, that's what we've done, and we did it for a good reason. There was a rational prospect that if we attack the civilian population and cause it enough pain, they will press for what he called a cessation of hostilities. That's a euphemism, meaning cessation of resistance against Israel's takeover of the moves which were going on at the time to take over the occupied territories. So sure, if they will kill enough of them so that they'll press for quiet to permit us to continue what we're doing. Actually, Obama today didn't put it in those words, but the meaning is approximately the same. That's the meaning of his silence over the core issue of settling and takeover of the occupied territories and eliminating the possibility for any Palestinian meaningful independence, omission of this. But Eban and Gur, who I was quoting, chief of staff, would have also said, my heart bleeds for the civilians who are suffering, but what can we do? We have to pursue the rational prospect that if we cause them enough pain, they'll call off any opposition to our takeover of their lands and resources. But it was, I was just quoting it. They've said it very frankly. That was 30 years ago, and there's plenty more beside that.